Welcome to another edition of the MSDW Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. Joining me is Dan Morneau, assistant editor, and we have 2 weeks of stories to catch up on, including some Dynamics 365 customer experience roadmap updates, the end of Envision, the LinkedIn acquisition, and new AX customers' perspectives. Plus, we'll throw in a couple of 2017 predictions and preview upcoming free educational webcasts. So, Dan, let's begin.
A lot of ground to cover. First off, Microsoft and LinkedIn complete acquisition begin prioritizing integrated scenarios. And this was by you, Jason.
So following the European Commission's approval of the LinkedIn and Microsoft deal, we saw matching blog posts on LinkedIn, one by Satya Nadella, the other by Jeff Weiner, explaining that they were moving forward, that the deal was now done, and with a little bit of background on where they were going next. Best I could tell, it's the continuation of LinkedIn's business, plus a range of places where they expect that they'll actually try to do integration scenarios. Now, it wasn't all that interesting because they both just kind of copied and pasted the same 8 bullet points of ways that they might work together. Some of them were more or less interesting to me personally. Obviously, the most obvious was the idea of integrating LinkedIn's sales tool with Dynamics 365 for giving salespeople a better insight into their clients, their prospects. And obviously, there's a whole lot of other possibilities there when it comes to things like training and recruiting, social media management, perhaps, integration with Office 365 and Windows, kind of bring elements of LinkedIn information to those as well. So it was really just kind of a laundry list of some of the most obvious integration points, though they really weren't committing anything in particular, but I think that kind of highlighted their top priorities.
Sure. It'll be interesting. The question that keeps coming up is who's going to own all that data, and do users want all that data in one place?
Yeah, that's a concern I've heard from several people, that could people get a little soured, especially in the business realm, get a little soured on how much of their information LinkedIn has, especially if, it's kind of merged together with Microsoft Business Solutions, right? Could be sort of a multiplying effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next up is Microsoft Envision discontinued melts into Microsoft Ignite. As we subtitled this, a boldly conceived but poorly received Envision 2016 put an end to convergence and to itself. Ignite is now Microsoft's landmark event. This came on quietly. It was in a blog post by Microsoft Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer Chris Capicella. I'm sure that the partners were alerted in an email, but yes, they are shifting Microsoft Envision, which was aimed at decision makers, C-level types, into Ignite. So it'll be a more fiery Ignite this year. So Jason, you were at Envision. What did you think?
I thought it was an event that had some promise to it. I wasn't sure what that promise might be exactly, but it seemed like they might have a chance to reform it, to re-envision it, no pun intended, as something pretty interesting. And I thought they were going for something there this year with this sort of executive summit style event. But, I wasn't all that surprised when I saw the announcement from Chris Capicella. I had just heard so little enthusiasm in partner channels, that I pay attention to, the part where it delivers Dynamics-related solutions, ISVs in that space, partners in that space, not a whole lot of enthusiasm. I think we talked about this in the previous podcast, but I raised some questions myself about, does anyone really care about the kind of partner incentives that Microsoft put out there to try to entice partners to join the event and to try to get them to drive their customers to the event? It really didn't seem to add up to me. We didn't get much enthusiasm in the quotes we got from a few different partners about what they thought either. So to see it canceled, not all that big a surprise, I suppose. I think it's an indicator that they weren't driving the kind of attendance that was going to make it successful. So they just probably pushed it off and, put some of the content into other events. So they now have 3 events. There's Ignite, which is sort of the IT crowds event. There's Build for developers. And the third event, which used to be WPC, Worldwide Partner Conference, is now being called Inspire. So Ignite, Build, and Inspire. I'm not sure I'm really feeling the Inspire title myself, but that will be the partner event meant to inspire partners, I guess. I think that's really one of their rock solid events, and hopefully they don't work to change that too drastically, because I know having gone to many of them, I find it valuable for myself, and I know partners that go to it really count on it. So for a whole range of reasons, it's a product update, it's a networking update, it's a relationship management opportunity for partners with each other, with Microsoft. So hopefully it's just really a rebranding. The other point that one person at least raised to me was, we're going to see any heads roll over the end of Envision. I mean, this canceling an event that they planned for 5,000 people is no small decision, right? I mean, I'm sure there's deposits lost, and there's whole months of thousands of man hours already invested in it, not to mention collateral materials and this and that. So I haven't heard anything myself, but that's an area I'd certainly be interested to keep an ear open for. Is there any fallout from this within Microsoft?
That'll be interesting to see. As I heard it referred to, Envision was a bit of an anticipantment, and
yeah.
But, to me, it was, as you put it, well conceived. There was a good theory behind it. It was worth a try, and I kind of hope no heads roll over it. It was worth a try, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was, and I think they could have gone for it this year as something. I think, it came from Convergence, and the focus there was largely or sort of centrally Dynamics with other Microsoft tools and technology and services around that. When they completely eliminated that sort of cornerstone as Envision, I think the structure fell apart. I think it was trying to be everything, and it maybe turned into nothing. It was too unfocused. If I had to guess one reason why it didn't work, it was just too unfocused to be appealing to any one particular group to drive them to it.
Well put. Next up, Microsoft Dynamics 365 update to CRM partners includes unified client plans, CRM app improvements.
So Microsoft gave CRM partners, or now Dynamics 365 partners, a bit of a sort of a roadmap update, product update on the Dynamics 365 customer experience apps. So that's the 5 apps that kind of come out of the Dynamics CRM product, which would be, sales, customer service, marketing for whatever marketing is there, field service and project service automation. And I observed this this was done at the Extreme CRM event in California. I wasn't at the event. I was really just observing from afar. But people do a great job at these things of, taking down all the notes of all the slides. And these CRM-focused sessions from Microsoft in the last couple of years really have a bit of a laundry list feel to them, where they really just step through, here's this capability, here's this capability, here's this capability, here's this, and it does feel a bit like a laundry list of all the different cool new things that you can do with CRM. And, to an extent, it makes sense. They have such a strong core to that product with the core CRM technology, with the XRM framework, that as long as they're tying into that, you really can kind of start listing off all these different things you can potentially do on top of it. And so, they talked about a new unified client, which I thought was very interesting. And I think that extends beyond even the CRM apps into Operations AX app. So I think we could see that coming soon. They talked about these insight apps, so relationship insights, which I know we'll talk about a little bit more here, and other kind of insight apps that will kind of give people sort of turnkey or ready-made analytics about what their customers are doing, and maybe also the usage of the system by sales teams, and different kinds of apps that they're working hard to sort of build there to really show maybe more the promise of the app. But it sounded like a worthwhile and sort of substantive update from the team. It was nothing they were doing any news releases on. I even checked to make sure that any of the things that they were revealing, they didn't treat it like news, but I think there was some useful stuff there. So worth checking out. I created a Storify story just to kind of capture what I thought were the highlighted reports out of Extreme CRM. There'll be another one of those in Lisbon in, I think, early spring or late winter. So as you get closer to spring 2017, my guess is there'll be even more to reveal, because that'll be right in the time frame where they like to do more CRM-based product release details.
Great. Next up, relationship insights for Dynamics 365, now in preview.
Yeah, so again, this was something I think Microsoft talked up quite a bit at Extreme CRM, and it's something that has been anticipated. It's one of these new insights tools, relationship insights. It's really, as I see it, a very nice showcase for some of the analytics and some of the, blended analysis of data from different sources that Microsoft can provide to its customers, whether they're using Dynamics 365 or another CRM. It's in preview now, which means people can start using it, at least in the US. So it'll be interesting to see what the uptake is, what partners think of it, because I think it's one of those things that could be a really cool demo tool to show off Microsoft's abilities in this range. And there's so many things in the Dynamics 365 sort of customer experience realm right now. So many different features, so many different capabilities rolling out all the time that I just hope it doesn't get lost in the fray, because they do so much right now with pushing that roadmap forward. But pretty cool that it hit preview, and I'm looking forward to seeing what some of the early adopters do with it.
Great. Next up is a guest column by Chris Hurley, Director of the Dynamics Practice North America at Computer Futures. Perspectives on moving to Microsoft Dynamics 365 for operations, making sense of early user and partner reactions.
Okay, so this was a piece that when it was brought to me, I was really intrigued because it's, I'd say a bit of a good news, bad news story where the Computer Futures team, the members of that team that focus on Dynamics, CRM, and AX, they talk to AX customers and AX partners to try to find out where people sat on the issue of the future of the roadmap 365 for operations after learning about it in detail at the AXUG Summit event over this past autumn. And, they got some good feedback, some helpful, I think some enlightening feedback, and not all of it good, though. So there's some, make no mistake, there are some unhappy users out there who did not like what they heard about the future of AX. And in particular, I say the number one issue is the fact that Microsoft won't have an on-premise option. There are still, I think, and I've heard this over and over in sort of anecdotes, but I think to get some specific interviews with customers was pretty cool. There are companies that simply do not accept the fact yet that if they stay with AX, they will go to an Azure public cloud-based ERP solution. Is just not something that some IT managers or CIOs are willing to accept yet. My theory on this one, perhaps we could call this the first prediction of the podcast, is that Microsoft will be forced to make more concessions about that stand that they've taken in 2017, that the pressure will mount from important customers, from important partners, that if they want to make the inroads that they hope to make with 365 for operations, they're going to potentially have to make some kind of change. I'm not saying totally reverse course again, but something. So that's what I took away from that. Now, I think there's a bright side to it, and that's in the article as well. Partners are actually excited or optimistic about some elements of the 365 for operations, public cloud, ERP approach. They see it as a winner for big enterprise. They see it as a winner for new clients who are in the market for ERP in the next couple of years. A lot of these X users probably won't even be considering it for 2-3 years or more. A lot of them are moving to 2012 R3, so they get at least 4 or 5 years here of support without any issues. Heated words today might not translate into unhappy clients 3-4 years from now. Everything might simmer down, and people could still find a way to live with and continue with AX, even if they aren't happy with what they've heard so far.
Sure, everybody needs to take a breath. Okay.
Yes.
Next up are some more predictions, and this is by Mark Polino, Director of Client Services at FastPath, whom you can always count on for some great, bold and irreverent quotes. 6 Microsoft Dynamics GP predictions for 2017.
Yeah, Mark has a good track record, I would say, of predicting the future when it comes to the Dynamics GP space. He's tough on himself, though. If he gets something wrong, he will admit it, and he will not be happy about it. So I think this year's predictions sort of, to me, suggest he's really trying to get them right, as opposed to just making spectacular predictions. I agree with almost all of them. Incremental improvements in incremental feature introduction. So no big wow features coming that are really going to change the face of GP. And I think that's absolutely right. I would have probably made that same one. Partner consolidation will continue. That's another one that's very likely to be true. I think Dynamics GP, as he notes, Dynamics GP partners, depending on their situation, have some very important decisions to make in the next year, 2 years, or and beyond. So, and there's more there. I'm not going to give them all up here, but go check out the article. He has, like the title suggests, 6 different predictions and some thinking behind each one. So worth a read, I would say.
I think my favorite might be, you will be sick of Dynamics 365 marketing.
See, I think that marketing is, I think they're just getting started with 365 marketing. I think you haven't heard anything yet. I think the thing they do need to be careful about is to try to sell these existing customers, existing GP customers on 365 too much, because that will really generate some loud voices that, we certainly pick up on, but I think a larger, broader press will pick up on, kind of cater to a broader IT audience. And I think Microsoft Microsoft does need to exercise a little bit of caution there, but I expect to see a lot more in sort of the broader press, advertising 365, as a competitor to SAP, as a competitor to say IBM, Oracle, well, maybe not IBM directly, but Oracle and Acumatica and whoever else they really want to go head to head with. So that's what I'm looking for. I mean, I think you're hearing it at these Microsoft events. I think we need to start hearing it, to the outside world, this product. So, and I'll probably have a little more to say about that and some predictions I do. I think it hasn't really picked up steam yet.
Great. Next up, and this is by Mark Anderson, a contributing writer, New Age of Business Communications, Slack, Yammer, and Microsoft Teams.
So I think Slack is probably one of the most talked about business applications of 2016. It's done very compelling things and changed the way a lot of people work. And when people saw Teams, I think my reaction, and it seemed like others too, was, okay, this is going after Slack, and Microsoft really should go after Slack. Slack's shown that this style of collaborative workspace, collaborative communication for teams works. And if Microsoft's really serious about building, the future of business productivity, as they've been pushing forward with, they need something that does this. And better to, invest seriously in R&D to make it work natively rather than trying to buy Slack or something like Slack and shoehorn it into Office 365. So I don't know how many people, I haven't heard too many myself that don't think that was the right approach for them. So Slack, I think, is game to go head to head with Microsoft on this particular space. But Microsoft really thinks about it as an alternative to spending, I don't know, how many billions of dollars do you think it would have cost to acquire Slack? I mean, I forget what the estimates might have been there, but multi-billion-dollar investment in Slack, maybe spending a fraction of that on Teams R&D could be pretty compelling. We'll have to wait and see. And is there a space for Yammer? So we get a little insight on where Yammer sits and all of that.
Next up, and this is a very intriguing story, I think, building an emergency response solution in Dynamics CRM, SharePoint, and the Microsoft Cloud. This is by Stefano Tempesta, VP of Engineering for EF Education First.
Yeah, we couldn't finish this particular podcast episode up, I don't think, without calling attention to this article. Stefano Tempesta and his team at EF Education First have built really one of the most interesting solutions that's built on Microsoft Cloud technology that I have seen so far. And Stefano does just a great job of sharing his knowledge and sharing his experiences so far in terms of what he and his team have built at EF. So one of the reasons I'm so excited about this piece is we'll also get a chance to see a demo of it in an upcoming webcast this coming week on December 21st. So I really encourage anyone who wants to know what Microsoft's cognitive technology and machine learning and bot framework look like and how they can be built into a real life, real stakes solution that uses CRM and SharePoint and actually has the potential to save lives, how that can be done today and with real building blocks of technology, they should come to this webcast. It's on Wednesday, December 21st at 12 o'clock U.S. East Coast time. So 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Definitely encourage everyone to come to this one. It's going to break down a whole range of things from, let's see, I'm just going to look through the list. So there's a use of Azure IoT Hub. There's tracking with GPS. There is a bot framework to communicate with via text over to assess the safety of students who are living anywhere within a particular city where there's an emergency. There is reporting via SharePoint and integration between CRM and SharePoint. There's Azure Logic apps involved, and this is all real work that's been done here. So if you're thinking about what the future of some of this technology looks like, if you're a Dynamics customer, this is the one to check out.
Great. Next up, we have 4 interesting partner stories. First off is Sharing Economy in Microsoft Dynamics Partner Channel, Growth at Dinosaur's Talent on Loan portal. And this is a talent sharing story, as we observed in it. Too little talent is, of course, a curse to the Microsoft Dynamics partners, but so is too much talent warming the bench.
I was just reading something else where kind of on the point of questioning this term sharing economy. And I think often, it's associated with Uber or Lyft or Airbnb. Oftentimes it's maybe a misnomer. But I think sharing in this case almost is the right term. It's sort of a talent sharing model. It makes a lot of economic sense. If you have capacity in your team of skilled professionals as a Microsoft partner, why not put them to use on a project? If you need to staff up quickly, it seems pretty smart that unless it's part of a larger term, plan, that you can bring people in with very little friction who can do that job and help you win the business and help you find continuity. But, at the same time, avoid committing to sort of seeking out and recruiting talent that's already on the bench somewhere else. So with Dinosaurs, I was actually amazed in looking at this article, the level of support, I guess, or encouragement they've had from Microsoft itself. They were actually named in a talk at WPC last year by Gabrielle Schuster, who named them specifically as a place where partners should be, taking advantage of the talent that's out there and the availability of that talent when they're putting deals together and using it as a business tool. I think they're still growing, and I think they have larger aims, but worth reading sort of where they're at right now and where they hope to go. It's an area, they're not the only player, and there's a lot of sort of talent on loan or talent on demand kinds of services that have taken form in the last year. We've covered several of them, and I think that's another trend that will just continue to grow given where the global economy is at, especially with, IT talent.
I'm delighted with this story because the channel is doing something that is very common in, say, architecture, engineering, and construction, or waste management, or in large-scale government-type projects like the government of Egypt dredging the Nile. You assemble the absolute best team you possibly can from wherever they are. So it's a delight to see the channel doing that as well.
I mean, I think if you take this to its logical conclusion, you can see a whole lot more. If this really does kind of hit critical mass in the next few years, this model, you'll see a lot more independent consultants. There already are a lot of them, but a lot more independent consultants and probably a lot fewer, partners with the inventions, right?
Sure. Next up, Microsoft rolls out new cloud training for next-gen tech pros.
So Microsoft's putting a fairly large amount of effort into these new open training initiatives. They want to get people trained up on the technology that they believe will have the most demand. Obviously, that could be a real bottleneck if the demand for the technology is there and the skills to actually deploy it are not. So this seems to sort of affect both, existing partners and people looking and thinking about their career, maybe the next stage of their career. So, Microsoft's incentivizing them with low price certifications, free training in the areas of cloud technology that they think, really need a bit of a bump here. So it'll be interesting to see if how many people they are able to put through that training and how much momentum they build. I suspect this is one of those areas where we're more at Inspire 2017, also known as WPC 2017.
Next up is a case study, and this is Accelerated Microsoft Dynamics NAV Deployment, How Scope Limits Fostered ERP Success for One Distributor. And this is a story from over in the UK where the NAV people helped a healthcare provider, Wilkinson Healthcare, to implement NAV in under 12 months. And there was some urgency to that. And they used agile software development techniques to really work cheek by jowl with the client to keep the project on scope, on budget, on schedule. And it sounds like it was a resounding success.
Yeah, always nice to hear a deployment or implementation story where there's a lot of discipline involved and there is some urgency, and they appeared to meet their goals. So good for them, and it was nice to hear the NAV people. When we say that, the company is the NAV people, sharing that with us, and also hearing from their client who actually went through this with them, and certainly sounded like a potentially high pressure, challenging scenario that they were dealing with, but a nice win for his partner and for NAV itself.
Yeah. And Wilkinson, too, is a provider to the National Health Service, and my understanding is that the UK's National Health Service does not allow for interruption of any kind. They will dump you like a hot potato.
Failing to, what was it, like 400 to 600 orders a day, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you start missing those orders, I think that's fairly catastrophic in their situation.
Sure. Next up, we had several very practical how-tos from dynamic experts. Most of these folks have written for us before. First up is how to filter a dynamic date range in Microsoft Dynamics AX. This is by Everett Boss, who's a solution architect with Sickich. Everett gave us a couple more very practical articles as well. Firming planned orders by adding lines to an existing order in Microsoft Dynamics AX, and then purchase receiving using advanced warehousing in Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Operations AX7. As always, these are, you can tell by the titles, the subjects are a tad dense, but very, very practical, as Everett's titles always are.
Yeah, a lot of Everett's pieces are kind of conceived, I think, as he works with a client and dives deep into some particular workload or some particular capability that they really need to make the most of. And he does a great job of learning it and then sort of writing it up and sharing it with everyone, which is great to see. I would just segue into the next one by saying, another of our contributors on the AX side takes a little bit of a different approach, and that you can see that in a new piece by Scott Hamilton, Managing Consigned Inventory in Dynamics 365 for Operations. So this was a piece that just recently went up. It's about 4,500 words, but it is comprehensive exploration of the Dynamics 365 consigned inventory capabilities. It was one that in sort of getting it ready for publication, I was asking Scott about this piece. And consigned inventory it's a very interesting model for manufacturing. For me, I think consignment first. I think of sort of retail consignment and the model there. And it's a little different when it comes to what manufacturers are asking for from their vendors when they're getting production components, and this ability to sort of pay, have this inventory available to them, but not pay for it until they use it. And it takes a lot of different flavors. It's not sort of one way that this works, as Scott kind of explained it to me. So you use these AX or these 365 for operations capabilities to match whatever your particular arrangement is with your particular vendors and how they want to kind of turn over that inventory to you, and when they want to turn it into a purchase order, and it has to be paid back to them versus having it sit on your shelves or on their shelves in a warehouse. A lot of it has to do with, basically when that inventory goes on your books and how you manage your cash. So it's a pretty interesting challenge there in the manufacturing space using the concept of consignment.
Sure. Next up, what's new in project accounting and management in Microsoft Dynamics 365 for Operations? And this is from our friends at Real Dynamics, Raul Mota and Yogesh Kasad.
So there were some enhancements and capabilities of project accounting in 365 for Operations AX7, and they dive into those in terms of the reporting, the resource management, billable hours, and intercompany accounting. It's a nice detail, again, walkthrough of the range of capabilities and some of the complexities that project-based businesses are facing and how AX7 can help them. I think it's also sort of a timely piece because companies are pushing to do more project accounting, even in areas, right, where maybe historically they didn't consider themselves project-based companies.
Sure, and a lot of manufacturing companies now have adopted that model. They do have that project mindset. They're interested, as the gentlemen go into in this piece, earned value management, which is not a term that you heard in manufacturing until the last couple of years. So that's an intriguing piece. Next up is getting the most from Microsoft Dynamics AX upgrades, and this is by Kevin Lutz, VP of Dynamics Delivery at CGS. As we observe, because each version of Dynamics AX has a sunset date and each introduces new and rich functionality, you need to know the high-level best practices to make an upgrade go smoothly.
Well, I think one of the top recommendations was to use a Microsoft partner for your upgrade. In fairness, Kevin is the VP of delivery at a Microsoft partner, so perhaps no surprise there, but it's a valid point. I think a lot of companies would be hard-pressed to get through an upgrade of AX on their own. It also kind of touches, as we're kind of near the end of the podcast here today, that I think this sort of comes back to some of the considerations for companies that have seen the future of AX and are now trying to make a decision. When do they want to invest in it? How do they want to invest in it? Who needs to be involved at what point in the process? And so Kevin has some pretty solid suggestions of how to approach an AX upgrade, whether you're going to 2012, whether you're going to 365 for operations, how to do it without, for lack of a better term, mucking up the whole process.
Yeah. And yes, he's a partner, and yes, a partner would recommend using a partner, but very practical point is that if you're going to do this upgrade, you really need to chart your business practices and your processes, and this is something that a partner is going to be a real past master at. They're good at leading teams, they're good at staying on focus, they're good at not spending a lot of time charting something that hasn't changed in years and charting it anew. So that is a real time saver when done well.
Yeah, I guess I'd add, there's a few AX customers I've talked to over the years who really could handle something like an upgrade on their own. But if you don't think you're one of those companies, you're probably not one. And even if you think you're one of those companies, you still might not be one. A few can pull it off, but not many.
No, indeed. You know, you wonder about that. What's that quote about? Acts as his own lawyer is a fool?
Yeah.
Don't know.
Has a fool for a fine?
Yes. Yeah. Maybe that's a little harsh, but yeah, it is only the real best of companies, IT-intensive companies, I think, are really satisfied with their own work when it comes to an implementation. So, that was our last story. Next week, let's move on. Jason, what stories do you have coming up?
Well, the two things I'm most interested in at the moment, we'll have some more predictions on specific Dynamics products and more general. So we got that coming. I'm going to be looking for sort of best or top articles of the year, most popular kinds of things. And we also have two webcasts that I'm really looking forward to. One, as I mentioned before, is the one from Stefano Tempesta on Wednesday, December 21st about building an emergency response solution using CRM, SharePoint, all the rest. And then we also have a look at Nav integration with Office 365 coming to us by Jared Hall of Microsoft, looking at specifically Nav 2017, the in-Office 365 experience. I think Jared will also be joined by at least one other member of the Microsoft product management team on that one. I've seen a version of this presentation once before, and it was really impressive. You know, for myself, seeing what they had already accomplished and where they're taking it, I think it's one of those signs that I took away from this past fall's conference season, that they've got some good things brewing in terms of how Office and Dynamics are going to go forward together. So if you haven't seen those details yet, even if you're not a Nav customer, really worth taking an hour to sit down and see it, because it's some pretty cool stuff.
Great. And I'll be looking at several stories. One is Outlook, the tail that wags the dog when it comes to CRM user adoption. CRM, Dynamics 365, marvelous, of course, but sometimes all a salesperson needs is Outlook. It's what they're used to, and does it drive user adoption? The second piece will be a deep dive into Bell Createch in Canada, a company that won a contract as a support center for Dynamics 365. We'll interview Mario Chabot, who's the GM of Createch's Microsoft business unit, about the need for the center and how they won the confidence of the Canadian government.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to that one. Okay, well, this has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to be on the podcast, maybe you're an ISV with a product release or a consultant with a case study, or perhaps a VAR with a unique slant on the Dynamics space, drop us a line. I'm Jason Gumpert. You can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com.
And I'm Dan Morneau, Assistant Editor at DMAURNO@msdynamicsworld.com.
Until next time, we're MS Dynamics World signing off.